He's on the loose. He's the one and only Groose. I said it. Groose is another fan-favorite character in the Zelda series, but during the early hours of your first playthrough of Skyward Sword, it may not be clear why. Groose is a bully who goes to great lengths to cause trouble for our hero, but underneath that facade of arrogance may be something deeper and more relatable. This is Zelda Character Study, a series where we examine the wonderful cast of characters that helps bring this magical series to life. And today, we're taking a look at the side character who arguably has one of the best character arcs in the series, Groose. The first time we see Groose in the game is right at the very beginning on Skyloft. Groose is a fellow student at the Knight Academy. Link's pet Loftwing, which he needs to compete in the annual wing ceremony, is missing, and it doesn't take long to trace the great bird's disappearance back to Groose. Even as Link approaches him, he sits boasting about having essentially kidnapped and locked up the bird, as his lackeys Colin and Stritch massage him. When he realizes that Link has overheard his conversation, he quickly changes the subject, playing coy and acting as if he's done nothing wrong, though he's terribly conspicuous. He is demeaning towards Link, but even here we get a great sense of why he dislikes our hero so much. When Zelda shows up to defend Link, Groose gets flustered and storms away, and his dialogue gives us some pretty clear insights into his character. For one thing, he clearly has feelings for Zelda, feelings that are unrequited. And seeing the close relationship that Zelda has with Link, it's not a stretch to say that he holds some jealousy towards Link. The other thing to note is that Groose isn't entirely selfish in his dialogue here. He does call Link a dope, but criticizes Link's carefree nature, saying that Link floats through life with his head in the clouds, and that he is dragging the honored academy through the mud. Overall, it's more of a critique of Link's work ethic than anything else. The dialogue regarding Link and Zelda from her father supports what Groose says. Even she notices how little effort and practice Link puts into his studies, in particular his flying. But the relationship that Link has with his instructors and the academy headmaster seems to imply that he's a student in good standing. So why the disparity of perception here between the students and the instructors? Simply put, Link, our hero, is naturally gifted. He is just good at everything with little effort. Groose's own advice, even if it may be tongue-in-cheek, is to work hard. The truth is, based on his dialogue here, I believe that it's likely that Groose puts a lot of work into his studies, but isn't as naturally talented as Link. Between that and Link's close relationship to Zelda, it's understandable that Groose would harbor some resentment. Now, I'm not saying that this excuses his behavior, but it may explain it. I can say from some experience that it isn't easy to toil away and work hard and see a peer who puts in significantly less effort surpass you. Although Groose's romantic feelings towards Zelda is certainly the catalyst that sets his actions into motion here, he pens up Link's bird in the hopes that Link won't be able to compete in the wing ceremony, an act of sabotage that would certainly allow him to win the competition if it were successful, which would mean he'd be allowed to complete the ceremony atop the goddess statue. Of course, this doesn't work out for Groose, and Link is able to take his place in the ceremony. When the game's conflict is set into motion and Zelda is pulled to the surface by Girahim's tornado, Groose spends a great deal of time locked in his room at the academy. We don't see him again until nearly the halfway point of the game. As Link descends to the sealed grounds, Groose ambushes him in the hopes that Link would lead him towards Zelda, but things aren't as he expects. First, he panics while trying to come to grips with his surroundings. After all, this guy has only ever heard stories about the surface, which most didn't believe was real. He spent his entire life on this island in the clouds, so he understandably was overwhelmed. I mean, seeing a Goron for the first time is sure to confuse a guy. After Link explains the situation and he starts to wrap his brain around it, and upon learning that Zelda is in fact alive and okay, his demeanor quickly returns to its typical state. He tells Link to step aside so that he instead can fulfill the role of hero, and rushes off. However, when he's told by Impa that he is in fact not the goddess's chosen hero and that Link is, he basically throws a tantrum and storms off. It's at this point that the imprisoned awakens, and while Groose cowers in fear, he bears witness to Link defeating the enormous beast. We see Groose approach Link here, about to say something with an expression that certainly implies that he feels bad. But before he can speak, Impa draws Link's attention away. As Link and Impa discuss their plans, we see Groose processing it all. He follows them back to the temple and interrupts. First with a smirk, then with anger. He says the following: "I hate even saying this, but I guess you got it all figured out, Granny. Me? Well, there's nothing I can do to help Zelda. I'm useless." Impa tells him not to sell himself short, but Groose leaves the temple without saying anything more. This dialogue here, to me, is the beginning of Groose's turning point. He has held onto this lie of Link being useless up until now, convincing himself that Link's lack of effort made him a poor choice of hero, despite that Link has stepped up and fulfilled his role. It's easier for Groose to convince himself this about Link than come to terms with his own shortcomings. But after witnessing Link take down an enormous monster, he is forced to accept the reality that Link is indeed qualified to be the hero. But accepting that about Link means also accepting that he himself isn't the hero of this story. His choice of words here aren't critical of Link, but of himself. Groose's happy lie has been shattered. We don't see Groose again for a while, not until nearly the end of the game between the final two dungeons. Upon returning to the sealed grounds to activate the Gate of Time, we'll find a huge set of rails, or tracks, constructed around the sealed grounds. Groose's own attitude seems to have changed. When Link questions what the rails are for, Groose simply answers, "Oh, you'll see before long." When the imprisoned starts to awaken again, instead of cowering in fear, Groose is ready to leap into action, calling for Link to join him out on the battlefield. As it turns out, Groose has built a mechanical catapult of sorts that can move along these rails, which he calls the Groosinator. What at first may sound like bragging becomes a bit more introspective, as he says, "I don't know what came over me. I had no clue I had the talent to make something like this." Now during the battle, he will assist Link by catapulting enormous bomb flowers at the imprisoned, which slows the beast down. Once the imprisoned is defeated and resealed, Groose will commend Link on their joint effort and even encourages Link to return to the temple and activating the Gate of Time, seemingly now on board with helping Link further his goals. A far cry from what we saw the last time. Back in the temple, Impa will thank both Link and Groose, with Groose saying, "You give me too much credit. You were the one who got me to stop feeling sorry for myself and put my energy into doing what I could to help." When Link activates the Gate of Time and prepares to travel to the past where Zelda is, he pauses and seemingly invites Groose to come along. But Groose, who previously wanted to be the one to be with Zelda, declines. He says he'll stay behind in case the imprisoned wakes up and ponders for a moment, about to say something else, before interrupting himself. He then tells Link to tell Zelda he said, "What's up?" It seems to me, in this moment, that he knows Zelda would rather see Link, and while it pains him due to his own feelings towards her, he has to accept this. After Link returns from his excursion back in time, Groose asks to speak with Link again. He inquires first how Zelda is, and upon hearing about Zelda, he says to Link, "But you're going to do something about this mess, right?" Having now fully accepted Link's role in these events. Groose seems more melancholic at this point. He tells Link that he won't be returning to Skyloft and will stay behind with Impa, saying, "I'm doing what I want to do. I don't know how to explain it. I got this feeling in my belly that there's work to do here." He decides to stay to guard the imprisoned and says, "It ain't as action-packed as what you're doing, but maybe this is my destiny." He talks about enjoying the surface and its smells, and even talks about wanting to plant a tree here in the temple to watch it grow, saying, "I've got nothing but time." He then requests that Link let the people in Skyloft know that he's okay, and in particular to tell Colin and Stritch that he's happy. We'll see Groose again only a short while later, when the imprisoned starts to break free for a third time. Groose beckons Link to battle, this time less melancholic and more confident in himself. Groose assists during the battle in the same way as before initially. When the imprisoned starts to fly, Groose is even able to knock it down to the bottom of the pit. However, when his bomb supply is cut short, Groose quickly devises a new strategy. He launches Link onto the beast's head so that he can defeat it. After the battle is won and Link finds himself unable to enter the Faron Woods due to its flooding, Groose then uses his machine to launch Link through the air and into the woods, saying that the battle had gotten him thinking about other applications for his machine. Later, after Link is able to successfully complete the Triforce and wish upon it to eradicate the imprisoned, Zelda is awoken from her slumber. Groose is here in the temple to greet her and is so overjoyed seeing her alive and well that he's brought to tears. He shakes Link with joy and excitement and even hugs Impa. However, Girahim cuts their reunion short and captures Zelda, intending to take her back in time to revive his master Demise in the past. Despite shaking in fear, Groose still stands his ground, attempting to block the Demon Lord, though he is easily kicked aside. If the player talks to Groose here, he'll say to Link, "You gotta chase after that creep. Zelda's counting on you." Link does indeed pursue Girahim into the past, battles the Bokoblin horde, then fights Girahim. However, Girahim successfully revives Demise. Demise, noting how weak Zelda is in her mortal form, tosses her aside, but it turns out that Groose had followed Link into the past and is there to catch Zelda, saving her. Despite his own fears, he was able to bring himself to stand in the way of Girahim and even chase him back in time. Groose delivers a message to Link from Impa, stating that Demise will take time to regain his power and to defeat him before then. He then gives a concerned look to Zelda before calling down to Link, "You've got to do this. You're all Zelda's got." Things do work out, of course, and Link is able to defeat Demise. After the final battle, Impa gives congratulations to Link and to Groose for helping. Rather than soaking in the glory that he would have wanted earlier in the story, he simply says, "Well, you know, just glad I could make myself useful. I'm happy things turned out okay." Back in the present, as the old Impa passes away, Groose is seen having the most emotional reaction out of the three present, being brought to his knees in shock and grief. Presumably, he had grown quite close with the old one. In the end, we see Groose reunited with his friends, waving happily to Link and Zelda before returning home to the sky. It's unknown if he returns to the surface or stays behind in Skyloft. So, what have we learned about Groose through these various encounters with him? While Link's struggle throughout the game is stepping into the role of hero, Groose's struggle is learning to accept himself. We can clearly track his character arc through the game to see this. Groose puts on a mean face at the start of the game and is an outright bully, but this is all behavior to mask his own insecurities. Around the game's midpoint, when his perception of the world, of Link, and himself are threatened, he goes through a range of emotions as he learns to accept this. Denial, anger, pure awe, anger again, then sadness. He spends some time grappling with his image of himself and of his destiny, while the guy that he had convinced himself was a lazy dope with no work ethic goes off on a grand adventure. But as we see in the game's final act, through the guidance of the elderly Impa, Groose finds new resolve. He stops feeling sorry for himself and instead decides to do what he can to help. He learns to accept himself for who he is, to accept that his feelings for Zelda are unrequited, and that that's okay. And he even learns new interests and skills along the way. And this is why Groose is such a fan favorite character. There's a real, palpable arc with distinct character beats and wonderfully written moments. He's one of the most expressive and emotional characters in the series, and it's truly a joy to see him progress throughout the game, as he goes from being a bully in denial to a hero in his own right. Indeed, once Groose's facade falls apart, we see an incredibly thoughtful and introspective character who truly does his best to help, and even ends up being pretty cunning and creative. Frankly, we don't see a lot of secondary characters in the series with such defined character development, but in the end, we could all learn a little something from Groose. Thank you so much for watching this video. I just wanted to take a quick second to say thank you to the lovely people who supported me on Patreon, as well as my channel members, particularly those who supported at the cheese level or higher, which includes Tetra, Brenda, Justin, Callie, Finley, Greymage, Hylian Historian, Gale, and Ethan3G. Thank you so much for the support, you guys, and I will catch you all next time. Bye-bye.